There's the game. All right. Okay, hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we discussed what final changes were necessary to release the initial MinstrelBuff II, and then started designing our new preferred anthems option. Today, we'll try to finish up the options screen, and then think about the logic necessary to use that preferred order in an actual UI. We're going to cover out what all that means in case you're just jumping in. And as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. In the meantime, Lord Zach says, "This is such a good song." Yes, I like finding some of the songs on some of the soundtracks that I enjoy, but I don't necessarily recognize from specific locations in the game, either because I had music turned off accidentally that day, or for whatever reason. And, so yes, I do enjoy this particular opening. All right, let me figure out. On the side of the screen here, we are coming around to the Extra Life charity fundraiser for children's hospitals. Standing Stone Games does this repeatedly, and Little Redhead is streaming in support of that. I'm not really streaming in quite the same manner, but I am supporting Little Redheads. So if you want to donate money to help children's hospitals, specifically I think the Boston's Children's Hospital, feel free to follow that link and chip in whatever amount of money you think is appropriate. Totally awesome. And if not, that's okay too. We're going to look at plugins either way. Okay, so MinstrelBuff plugin. Let me go ahead and make sure we have the desktop view. But we're going to come on in to the plugin manager, and right now none of the plugins are loaded. So I'm going to come on down to MinstrelBuff II and load that. Sounds like Little Redhead's taunting the cats with food. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move some stuff around. The windows first show up in the upper left-hand corner, but you can move them with the standard key. For me, that's Control \\. I'm going to move so that Meledrum Sentinel doesn't keep appearing in my background. Yeah. Yeah, Lord Zach says, shakes cat food bag. In this case, they are very responsive to the treat bag. I don't know what's different about the treats than the food, but they like it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at this UI, but we want the UI to be more visible to all of you at home. So let's go ahead into the options, come on down to the, when we added this to the UI, to the options, we didn't make the options taller. All right, guess we're going into code first. Let's come on into the options window, and we'll just go ahead and close things. Come into the options window, and that Anthem priority control, I'm not actually sure how tall that is, so let's figure out where it's being used. Okay, and add some debug statements. Turbine dot shell dot writeline. We're going to say y before Anthem priority, and spit that out, and that's how far down we are on the page. Oops. And then we're going to go ahead and do another one right after this. Y after Anthem priority. And that's going to give us a sense of how much space did we dedicate to this. For that, just unload, reload, and then we get some outputs. Interesting. Why did I see that twice? Oh, I saw it there and then again there. That's interesting and weird. But that's okay. We can see that Y got increased from 615 to 615 from 340. So we can see we got about 275 more pixels worth of usage. So if show debug options, blah, blah, blah. So we want our height to be equal to that plus that. And that is base plus Anthem priority. Cool. And at that point, we can come on in. Lord Zach says, we're calling it twice. Oh no, unneeded computes. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why it's being called twice, but if it's only being called twice when the plugin gets first loaded, then that's a bit of an annoyance, but it's not as bad as being called, say, every cycle. So we'll put a pin in that. In fact, we'll come on into our to-do and say onload. Where was that? Where were we? Turbine.shell. Great. That was in the middle of option window place controls. Is called twice. Why? Question mark. Maybe fix that. Cool. So that's out of my head. Don't need to worry about it anymore. We'll come back to it, hopefully. But we won't forget about it. Lorzai says, is it called on unload? That's an excellent question. All right, if we want to dig into it, and we totally can, it's piqued my interest as well. In the API documentation, we can see under turbine, under, I'm going to say engine, there is a get call stack function. And that can be really helpful when you know something is being called, but you're not quite sure why. And you're kind of struggling to figure that out, especially if LOTRO itself is responsible for calling the function. So we can just do, I wonder what the arguments are. Oh well. We can in place controls, was that? Place controls? Yeah. We can go ahead and say turbine.shell.writeLine. We're just going to say, actually, place controls. And then on a new one, turbine.shell.writeLine, we're going to go ahead and place the results of turbine.engine.getCallStack. Cannot assign function to parameter string. Are you sure? Returns a string. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Okay. The IntelliSense has cleared itself up. So unload, reload, and what we can see is that we see a get callback, a get call stack, yeah. Option, in class, in main. Cool. And we can see another one, option window 78 from option window 27. Well, I'm curious, what's option window line 27? We call self place control. Oh, okay. Oh. Yeah, okay, we do that. Get option control, great. Option window, get option control, and that's meant to return that. Whereas this, okay, so this seems to be meant to be a style that supports having an own separate window or embedding the control in the options panel. But we're never actually using option window for its own window, I don't think. Let's come take a look. Option window here, right here. When we pass self.setting, we do use self.setting. Fantastic. Okay, so I think because we're instantiating this and we pass in settings and we need the settings, the get option control here, instead of creating another control that gets placed in the UI, we probably don't want to do that. We probably want to call place controls. Yeah, so we just want to return self. I don't know. Let's find out if that's a terrible idea. All right, so. What's your problem? You don't like that there's a bunch of stuff after the return statement. Fair enough. I wouldn't like that either. All right, so if we go ahead and load this up, we can see we now, well, yeah, cool, okay. Now we've got other stuff in the mix here. Okay, so after 100 decoy, we only have one callback. The question is, do the options work? They do not, because we needed to have a control. We passed a window. That's a whole thing. What's another option we could do? Place controls is using that as a parent. We could do what we were doing here, but in the constructor. So what if we came in? I know this is not what I had in my head to do today, but sometimes you just get off on a tangent. What if we made a control? Do we want to call it? Let's actually call it self.control. We'll save off a link to that, because then we can return self.control. Oh, we don't want a return statement there, do we? And then we're doing self-place controls on the control instead. Okay, does this make some sort of sense? I don't know, let's find out. But then, get option control just returns that control. Maybe it works for both places. Awesome. We've got our control options back here. I'll bring that out a little bit. We've got the listing here that says only one of those callbacks is being called, and that makes sense, right? We have a window that we could be showing the control in, or we just pass the control off to the options. Now, we don't actually have the window opening up itself yet, but it feels like we could do that. I think the one thing that we would have to really question is, can you have the control be parented by this window if it's also going into that other one? I think that might be a mess. I'm curious what this is, how other plugins solve this problem of you can embed it in the options or in your own window. I've seen that happen, but I'm not so interested in it. This has sort of been a fun little diversion to see what's the problem and can we fix it. So the problem was we called place controls in the constructor for options window, but also in the get options control kind of staticky function that just makes a control. And those two were playing weirdly together because the thing that was made by get option control depends on stuff that's done in the constructor. So this isn't a true static function in the way that you'd think about it in a C# or C++ way of thinking about it. This required that the constructor was called first with settings. Otherwise, it just would not work. So that's interesting. And I think maybe it's necessary. Maybe you need double UIs. I'm not sure. We'll have to come in back to that. Zernzek says sorry. No worries. Okay, so that's interesting. So the answer to why is called in the, I'm going to call it CTOR. That's just short for constructor. You'll see CTOR and DTOR in languages like C and C++, or C++ for constructor and destructor, and it just sticks in my head. Okay, called in CTOR and in semi-static but dependent on CTOR function, whatever it was, get option control. This may have been in order to support both window and in options panel display. Cool, okay, well that was an interesting investigation. And Casper, you're on the chair.
I have tuna.
Oh, the redhead has tuna, and thus the cat is hovering. Okay, awesome. Let's go ahead and come on back in. While we were doing that, we added in the extra height into the options panel. And so now the options panel, we have access to the thing I wanted in the first place, which was to scale up this UI so that we can see it a little bit more easily. So perfect. I'm going to shrink down this plugins chat window a little bit so we can slide MinstrelBuff over on top of it, and then it's visible even when the code is up. All right, so what did we have? We were looking at a way of ordering the anthem priority, which is both displaying the anthems, but we also want it to be clickable so that when we click on an anthem, we can then move it up, move it down. So we got a very basic display. Now we want to make it interactable. And we need to figure out how to save the thing to properly populate it the next time around. Okay, so one good news, we have a working example. In the select theme, list box, we have selectable items. They change color when they're selected, and we can kind of use that as inspiration. All right, gonna get rid of that. Oh, the other thing we should do is should come check and see, is our source control, is our working directory pretty clean of other edits. So we're gonna pop open fork, the UI that we use around GitHub, and come in looking at the changes. Now this is all of Q plugins, and there's a bunch of other stuff. Now sometimes that can just be really distracting, so it's possible to come in and stash things away. So we can stash on non-MinstrelBuff changes. And unfortunately I did too many, so I'm gonna bring it back. Let's see. Okay. Stash. Oh, right clicking, stash just the 11 files. There we go. Non-MinstrelBuff changes. Okay. And now we know just the MinstrelBuff stuff. And that's just sitting on my hard drive waiting for me to come back and plop it back in. Okay. So we have changes to the to-do file. There's always more stuff there. There was... Oh yes, something I was doing last time. I don't think I'm ready to commit this, but it's a part of this change, and I'll need to replicate the changes across to French and German, was the idea of the canonical thing that an anthem is called. The only place where that is present is in this table that links up anthems to where they go into a fixed UI. And that seemed wrong to me. It seems like we should instead have variables that have these anthem names and then just reference the variables wherever we need. For instance, anthems for priority selection. Okay. So that's a fine change, I think. We'll see if I come to regret it. But it doesn't need to be committed quite yet. And then what we just saw today, the changes we just made as an experiment, but we also have the add anthem priority control. We're still working on that. We can go ahead and get rid of these little debug statements. Let's kill those. And the before and after to get the height, we don't need that anymore. All right. Great. All right, so working directory isn't clean per se, but it's pretty clean. All right, to do file changes. Let's just take a snapshot of that, get it out of here. Great. So back into the code. We have made this change in the options window. So let's keep on poking around and take a look and see where is this theme list getting its behavior from. So if we just search for theme, oh, awesome. Theme options. Yep, the select theme. Great. We have the theme list. Awesome. Okay. And then we have the list box. So this right here is where we're taking inspiration from. And then the add anthem priority control is where we're going to use it. So we're going to go ahead and try to split up. I think I wanted to split down. I like that better. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and use the source at the top and kind of the destination, what we're using it for in the bottom. All right, so we have our label. Awesome. We have our list box. And we have a list box here. Great. We're setting the parent. We should probably do that first. I always worry about forgetting to set the parent and then just nothing works. In fact, let's go ahead and just reorder to match what we're seeing there. Set parent, set back color, set position, set size. Great. Now, what are we doing? We have, we're using a list item. Great. Right now we're just doing a label, and that's fine. But, yeah, we'll come back to that in just a moment. Color list box index. And selected item changed. Okay, so those are two things we're not doing right now. let's figure out what that is. What is self color list box index, and where is it being called from? Okay, theme changed. Cool. Okay, so we're manually doing the coloration of the box, and that's fine. And it looks like they're doing it nice and generically. Look at that. Color list box index is using the sender to get the access to the list box in question. So we can just use this straight up, no changes. So we're going to come in here. We're going to go ahead and say self color list box index. And we're going to go ahead and just pass in the, whatever we call it, self.anthem priority list box. Okay. And we want to know when that selected index is being changed. So let's go ahead and just copy in that handler as well. We've got self list box name is different, and the priority list box selected index change equals a function. That's a little bit long, so let's go ahead and just break it up into a couple of extra lines here. So we have the anonymous function that receives a center and args, and we go ahead and say theme changed in the old one, but now it's anthem priority. Anthem priority changed. And we're going to need to define that function. But it can just go ahead and be right next to the other one. It's going to take a sec to find that. That's fine. Theme changed. Cool. So we want function option window, and we're going to call it anthem priority changed, taking in a sender, which we know is a list box. And we can do the same thing, self color list box index, and we want to pass in that sender that we just got. That's perfect. And then the magic. Update settings somehow. Actually, so this is not quite correct because we don't really want to update anything. We want to enable the buttons that let you move things up and down. So we're not actually changing things right now, we're just allowing the selection. So we actually want to update up/down buttons and update whether up/down buttons are enabled. And that's if you're already have selected the first one on the list, can't go any higher. If you select the last one on the list, can't go any lower. So it's a nice little UI affordance to just say, nope, that button's not available. Okay, so let's take a look and see, does this actually give us the feedback that we want? So we're going to go ahead and hit unload all, and then load that up, and come back into the options. And we can see, first of all, no, nothing's selected, but, oh, hey, there. If we select them, then we get exactly what we want. We get the whole row selected with a nice light color. Now, a concern I saw in the back of my head when I was hoisting out that function is that we have hard-coded colors here, and they don't actually match the hard-coded colors over here. I guess that's for the item. Those box set color, yeah, none of them match. And so it really feels like there should be some variables to take care of that. So we might have list box background equals, and define that as, we got the turbine 333. Awesome. And you might have list box foreground, selected maybe unselected, and selected equals. That might be a better option. And then it's a lot easier to read what's going on here. If I equals center get selected index, set back color to list box selected. In fact, we could say list item selected. Make that read a little bit more fluently. So list item, set back color, list item selected. Oh, I wonder what the logic is trying to detect here, he said, somewhat sarcastically, because it's so much easier. And again, set the item to list item unselected. Great. Now we can double check that we got those in the right order, though I think we did. Okay, that radar position is going to be a little bit annoying. Cool, that all looks great. So we're going to come on in here and do a search for any other set back color. Do we have any of those? We do. Great. And so Anthem priority list, we're going to set the back color of list item unselected. And thus we think it's useful to have an even different color for the background of the list. And actually that's an interesting question. If these things had borders or didn't have a background color, well, they don't have a background color. Yeah, I think it makes sense to say list item unselected, or just come and say list box background, and that happens to be the same as list item unselected for right now. This was turbine UI color 222. It feels like it should be visually distinctive, even with these small changes, so I have a feeling the color of the item is dominating. I'm not sure. But we have a list box background. We're going to go ahead and use that here. And then the only other set back color is right over here, the other one. But using two separate variables, even if they point to the same data, the same underlying value, is really nice because list box set back color, list box background. Okay. I feel like, logically, we're doing the thing we want to do. We didn't accidentally throw a list item background in there. List box, set back color, list item background, that's a mismatch, a semantic mismatch. Like, they're both colors, the program doesn't care, but semantically, we just use a list item background on a list box, and that feels weird. Maybe there's a reason for it, but here we can kind of document that the reason that we're using the same term is they're the same value, and so we're not using the same term, different label. All right, unload, reload, come back in. Great. This is still clickable. These are still clickable. That's going great. Great. So I was curious if Listbox came with its own ability to kind of color in the selected item. The answer is it doesn't seem to be, but easily extendable. We saw how simple that function looks. In fact, let's go ahead and hoist these variables out now. To the very top of the file, it feels a little bit more organized to definitely be used, having these defined before we see them in the code. Even though they will be defined before they're used, it's nice to have. All right. What else do we have? Well, we need to do something when we are clicked. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about buttons. We were talking about other buttons. Oh, this is wider maybe than I want it to be. Let's look at making these the same width. All right, so Anthem priority, there we go. This box, the width was 350, the other one was 230. Yeah, let's make those match for right now. I think that'll make me happier. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we need buttons to move the priority up and down. Now, we're going to need to remember to put space for these as well, so we'll come back to that. Just a moment. Let's go ahead and use a single view. Oh, here we go. We'll just call it 300 for those buttons. Add Anthem priority control. So we need up/down buttons. And also, note needs localization. Because I'm not going to translate these right now. It's going to be easier to get them on the screen just by putting it in English text here. Come back and fix it. So local, yes. And we are going to need access to these. Self.up button. Yeah, sure. Up first equals. It's going to be a turbine.ui.lotro.button because we want that blue themed Lotro style button, like these load and unload buttons. They go gray when they're disabled, and if you have a skin active, it'll automatically pick that up. So that's very nice to have. Then we just start doing the standard stuff. We need to go ahead and set parent to whatever we're using, probably the parent parameter of this function. We need a size and location. So self what's up button set size. Buttons, I mean, let's just start with like 75, 25. We do a lot of hard coding of sizes in LOTRO plugins, and that worries me a little bit because if you're talking about supporting bigger display sizes, like growing things up, you're either just using a stretching algorithm like we're doing here for the UI here, or you could actually pay attention to things like, oh, the button needs to be twice as big in pixels and whatnot. And that's a much harder problem to solve. So just doing the stretching of the plugin UI, so much easier, but it gets a little blurry if you take it too much. Let's go ahead and set that width. Oh, sorry, position. And we know that our Y has already been put in the right location. Let's see, Anthem list height plus 10, yep. So we're gonna go ahead and, again, be 20 over, be Y down, and we need to set that text. Self.up button, set text, you'll never guess what, it's up, great. Text, all right. And let's do the same for the down button. I'm doing these as self variables, saving them off because we are gonna wanna come back in and, well, that might not be necessary. If the logic for the up and down is just here in line, then they'll have access to those names. I have to think about that. Note, maybe make these local instead. Okay. No, I've already changed my mind. I don't want them to be local because I'm definitely going to be doing this in another function, and passing in the up and down buttons feels annoying. I don't know. I may triple change my mind here in a moment. Okay, so we've got an up button, we've got a down button. I just did a multi-select. If you're working in Visual Studio Code or other modern text editors, you can go ahead and, in this case, I'm holding down Control and Alt, and just moving the cursor up to establish the multi-select. You can see there's cursors after the period here on each of the 5 lines. And then we go ahead and just type, and we do the same typing at each of the caret locations. Lord Zach says, only fools don't change their mind when they receive new facts. Yeah, well, that's good, because I changed my mind a lot. Okay, so the last thing we need is we need a click handler. So that's just going to look like self up button dot click equals, and we're going to declare an anonymous function that takes a sender and an args. And we're going to go ahead and just do a turbine dot shell dot right line out just to say up has been clicked. And I like doing that just to convince myself that all the event handling has been hooked up correctly. We're just going to go ahead and copy paste that handler, get the variable name correct, and the text down. Cool. The other thing we need to do is figure out what did I do that makes it sad. Oh, I didn't double end. That's definitely going to make it sad. It would make me sad too. But we do need to go ahead and increase y. Y equals y plus 25. All right, let's give that a try. That should place 2 new buttons in the options here. I forgot to adjust the horizontal position, so that's a problem. We're going to go ahead, unload and reload, and now we've got 2 buttons. We have an up button and a down button. If we click them, we get up, we get down. Great. Lord Zach asks, can you do the syntax y plus equals 25? What a great question. You'll see in other embrace languages like C, C++, Java, C#, you'll see the syntax plus equals 25. And this just expands to y equals y plus 25. It's syntactic sugar. And the answer is no, you can't do that in Lua. I believe it's a parsing issue. Whenever you see limitations in syntax in Lua, it's probably down to the overriding goal is a single pass parser. Read every line once and with no backtracking or anything. And I don't know if that's easily accomplishable in this case with a single pass parser, but it's also just one of those things where, it's a shortcut. And it's a much more obvious shortcut if you have something called, the location of the enemy's enemy battleship equals 5. And then you want to say location of the enemy battleship plus equals 10, but you can't do that. You have to say equals location of the enemy battleship plus 10, and it gets wordy, right? It doesn't matter so much if your variable is called y, but if you have a meaningfully named variable, which is good, and you want to just add something to it, you start getting really clunky syntax. So no, it doesn't exist. I wish it did. I don't know for sure the reason why it doesn't, but I suspect it's either because the syntax of Lua is meant to be easy and simple to learn, or single pass parser type issues. And I could be wrong on both of those. All right. Great question, though. Yeah, there are things like y++, or the more commonly used for me, plus y, incremented by 1. Both of these just mean y equals y plus 1. You could also do y minus minus or minus minus y, and both of those are just y equals y minus 1. And I'm very used to those syntactic shorthands available to me in C#, C++, so on. And no. Agartha says the lack of plus equals and the one indexing are some of the more difficult things to relearn if you know other languages. Yeah, I would say for me, the lack of these syntactic shorthands, I can do without, but the lack of zero indexing, where all of your indices start by default at 1, throws me for a loop as well. I have to constantly fight against the desire to zero index things. And, it's not as if one is specifically right or wrong, but it feels much more fluent when you're talking about computer things to think in terms of offsets. When you're talking about arrays under the cover in C are chunks of memory, and the question is how many offsets are you from the start of that memory, and zero indexing is just a much more natural way to have that conversation. Now in Lua you're talking about tables, and there's no underlying memory model where a 0 or 1 index makes more sense, but okay, so we have buttons. These buttons need to do something. Specifically, we want them to reorder stuff in this list. And as a bonus, we would like to save off that order in settings. We're only going to conquer one of those things at a time. Let's see if we can move some stuff around. I don't know how list boxes do these things, but I know it's possible because as we were talking about last time, Travel Window 2 allows you to move things around. In fact, let's go ahead and get that going here as a place to crib from. I'm going to open up the LOTRO plugin compendium, and this is a great way to install plugins and to update plugins if you are not a download zip files and extract them and put the files in the right place kind of person. We're going to come on in here to the Add New Plugins tab, search for Travel Window 2, click it, click Add, and we're done. Super easy. Yes, Loretta says, that describes me. Absolutely. The one thing that Plugin Compendium can't do yet that I would like it to be able to do is the installation of patches. It's not very good at patches. But just plugins, so good. So good. And maybe in my spare time, once we're done with Dutch language classes, I'll submit patches to LOTRO Plugin Compendium and get that going. I don't know. Okay, so we've got it installed. In fact, if we come on in here, click the little green circle, we can see that Travel Window 2 is available. Let's go ahead and load it on up. It scans my skills when I first start up, and then we get the window. And I want to go ahead and find that little travel suitcase. It goes opaque when you're not hovering over it, or at least gray. and opaque. So it can be a little hard to find it when you've lost it. Let's come into the options. And in the options, we have exactly what we're talking about. If I want return home to come after return home to, click move down and done. So we know it's possible to do this. Now we just need to figure out how. I could try to get it done myself. I could cheat and go to the travel window too. I'm tempted to cheat. We'll see how productive that is, because travel window 2 is doing things that are way more complicated than what we're trying to do right now. And so it might be that the way it's doing all those complicated things makes it harder to read. All right, so we're going to browse Lord of the Rings Online. We're going into plugins. This is Travel Window 2, Source. And as we saw last time, this is, Options Panel. Why not? So we also probably have some strings somewhere. Index dictionary. I'm not entirely sure. Let's go ahead and do a recursive search. We're going to add a folder. It's going to be this folder, and we'll just search for move to top. That's a pretty distinct string. Excellent. We can see it's encoded in the move to string variable. It was index dictionary. Excellent. And we can see options panel, move to top button. Great. So handle the button, and in fact, we just want the move up and move down buttons. So let's look at move up button instead. Move up button. Actually, if the selected index item is already at the top. Well, that is where I want to add a little flourish here. If we're already at the top, I don't want move up to be active. But it doesn't hurt to have the logic anyway, just in case. So excellent, we'll start with that. If we're already at 1, then we're done, because 1 is the smallest number in Lua. Swap the selected item with the previous item. So we have a function called swap. Awesome. And then they update the main window right away. And then we update the settings. Okay. And then the selected index, they want to go ahead and update that. They're tracking that separately, it looks like. Cool. Okay, that all makes sense, except what on earth does this secret sauce of swap shortcuts do? Okay. Swap the order in the settings list by saving the first value. Thank you so much to the comments here. I don't know if that was Hyasa's comments or if they predated, but these are great. Swap the order in the settings list by saving the first value to a temp value variable, setting the value of the first index to the value of the second index, and then setting the value of the second index to the temp variable. Classic swapping logic. This is the kind of stuff you learn in computer science 101 is you have two things and you need to swap them. How do you do it? Save one off to a temporary variable, put the other in the first, put the temp in the second, done. And when we're first learning how to code, this is a very common problem that they throw at you, and you'll see it a lot in basic sorting functions, and yeah, I'm having flashbacks to high school here. But that's exactly the kind of code that we want. So let's go ahead and pull open our source, and let's see. I think it is reasonable to also have a function to do this. There's just enough going on here, and it's a very specific task, so I think that's great. So let's go ahead and say function, option window, swap, list items specifically. First index, second index. Great. And this is a point where I would call out in the travel window. First and second, I feel like are not called out as in variable names as being indices. It's kind of obvious when you're looking at how they're used. They're being used as indices. But why not just call it out? Index, second index. Now, good question. What do they call that in the API documentation? Let's go ahead and pull that up and come on over to a list box. That's in turbine.ui.listbox. And if we come in and say, let's see, get item. Get item, so many get functions. All right, They call it an index. Great. So calling our variables the same things that we see in the documentation, that's such a nice gift to future you who is trying to walk through your own code 6 months from now and say, what on earth is first? What's on first? And so coming in and just saying, okay, get item takes an index. Great. We're going to call it an index. That's just a little present from present you to future you, or another plugin maintainer. Okay. So we don't have the self.loaded concern right now, so let's hold off on incorporating that. Instead, we're going to go straight on into the rest of this. Excellent. Jumping on that Abbott and Costello grenade. I saw a Who's on First t-shirt the other day. Which feels like such an abstract thing to wear if you don't know what it's referencing. And if you do know what it's referencing, it's like, oh, that's fun. But if you saw someone walking around wearing this, it'd be like, why? I'll just say the first word there. Anyhow, so we have it in our heads this week because of just going back and rewatching the original sketch. Okay, so I like the comments here. I might go ahead and summarize them in my own words, but swap to list items using a temporary variable. Just going to simplify that down. So local temp equals oh, interesting. They're doing it both. Oh, yes. Okay. So they're doing it in the settings, and they're doing it in the list box. So to list items, and then we can also say swap the settings values if we want to immediately update the settings here. And that might be a good idea. Since we only have 7 anthems in the list, any kind of reading and writing we do from the settings related to it is going to be super fast. So doing updates on every change doesn't strike me as a problem. So temp list item equals, and here we've got the self dot anthem priority list box, and we're going to go ahead and get item first index. Then we're going to go ahead and remove that. Oh, interesting. That temporary variable is used for the settings, but because the list box knows how to insert and remove stuff, it doesn't have a swap function, but you can just pull out the thing and then insert it where it needs to go. And I would be concerned about how does that work if you've just removed an item and everything after that item is renumbered. I mean, obviously it works fine here. Move down, move down, move up, move up. But if you've just removed the item, the index of everything else seems off. Let's come back and see how swap shortcuts is actually used. Great. Yes. They're taking care of the logic in the click handler, and I think that's an inopportune time to deal with this. In each of these click handlers, they're having to say -1 because they know everything after this is going to be 1 index shorter. Okay, we have move up. They happen to know. Wait, no. Swap it with the other one before it. This is move top button. What's going on here? Oh, yes. They're doing a loop and just swapping it each time. Oh, that's painful. Okay, move up, swap with the item in the previous one. So they're swapping with that. They're going to rip it out, and then that item -1. Okay, that's fine. Moving down, they're going to rip it out and then move it +1. Maybe that works? Yeah, okay. I can believe that that's fine. Let's run with that. I have to convince myself. We'll be doing some testing here. So we get the item at first. We go ahead and say self dot anthem priority list box remove item at, and we're going to pass the first index. And we're going to go ahead and say self anthem priority list box insert item. First index, second index, and the temp list item that we just pulled out. Now, a thing about this is that we are hard coding that Anthem priority list box. That doesn't seem useful. Maybe we'd want to genericize it. We could actually pass the list box in question and go ahead and make this a generic function. It doesn't even have to live here. It could live in a generic functions file at this point. But the whole, we'll call it swap list box items here. We might need a separate one for swapping the temporary variables with that naming, but this is now a very generic function. Just here it is, here's the two things, swap them. So, note, do we need to do something special for nope. I think I'm happy with how it is. So we have swap list box items. Let's come on back up and find a place to use it. So when we see the click up button, we're looking for swap shortcuts. Whoops. No. Self swap list box items. We're going to go ahead and pass the Anthem priority list box. And we need a selected index. Now we're getting that somewhere. Let's see, selected changed, and the priority changed. Where do we make use of that? Cover list box, get selected index. Great. Where's the function that I was editing? There we go. Okay, so we know that that local selected index equals this. So we can go ahead and say selected index, and then this is going up. So selected index -1. And same thing, we can go ahead and get that selected index and swap it for the next one, +1. Now that might not be completely correct, but we'll just do some testing here. Load the travel window accidentally. We're going to come in and load MinstrelBuff instead. And distance up. We have a runtime error, great. We're going to go ahead and say, oh, hey, attempt to call method get selected index a nil value. Oh, of course, we can't use sender here. We have to use self anthem priority list box. All right, so distance up, awesome. We would have made progress, but I got an error. I clicked on it and tried it again, and it didn't work. So Let's come into 119. Great. We have this get item first index. We should probably know what that was. So for testing purposes, let's get turbine.shell.writeLine, and we're in swap items. And we're going to go ahead and say first index and second index are both being written out. Great question from Lord Zach in chat. I have a question. Are the Anthem priorities supposed to be this thick? They are. I had the vision of including the icon for each Anthem to the left of the Anthem name. And icons are 32 by 32 pixels at the moment. And so I made the height of each row just a little bit thicker than that, like 34, 35 pixels, which is a lot higher than your standard row height of maybe 20 pixels. Very noticeable without the images there. But I haven't gone ahead and put the images there because that feels like a refinement that's just, you know, less important than being able to change the sorting order. So it's on my to-do list. It's definitely in the design spec of put an image here. Just, you know, not there yet. Great question. Okay, so if we click, oh, we didn't check for clicking up at the very top, so that's going to be a problem. Swap 1 with 0. In fact, it's not a problem, or wasn't a problem. Fascinating. So if we go up, it was at 3. We wanted it to. Okay, up. Now we're getting swap items 0 and -1. All right, let's come back in to the up click handler. We get a selected index of Anthem priority list box get selection index. Fascinating. Okay, this is why we can deduce why the travel window 2 has its own mental idea of what the selected index is, because the list box is not retaining this. When we pull out and push in these things, we haven't retained the idea of that selected index. Now, we might be able to, for instance, we might be able to come on in here and say self.anthem priority list box. I don't know. What would we call this? Oh, IntelliSense. It's a little slow today. So we're going to say set selected index. That sounds good. Set selected index. And we're just going to pass the old selected index. No. We are... Let's be a little bit smart about this. Old selected index and local new selected index. Old index and new index equals old index -1. And then we can come on in here and say old index and new index. And every call that we do the swap list box is going to look very identical. Old, new, and then the logic for what old and new are gets separated. Lord Zach, we have lots of issues with our network in New Jersey, but I doubt it's related to your IntelliSense problems. If my IntelliSense is being routed through New Jersey, I'm going to be very sad. Okay, so we now have that new index as its own variable, which means we can reselect it, and maybe that resolves this problem. Maybe not. Let's come back in, reload, dissonance, up, 3 went to 2, up, 2 went to 1, awesome, up, 1 goes to 0, which is fine. Okay, it's not fine, because of that problem where the list was okay with us inserting it as 0, but it's really not good at inserting it at -1. Weird. So we can go ahead and come into swap list box items. Or do we? I think the up handler is probably the right place for this. And we saw this before, right? If the index is 1, if old index is less than or equal to 1, then return end. Great. And we can even say, don't try to move the topmost item up. Great. We're going to want the same thing on the down button, but we're not quite there yet. So distance, up, up, nothing. Perfect. Anthem of 3 peoples, up, 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 nothing. So we can see we are getting what we want out of this. The resonance, compassion, dissonance, prowess, war, composure. Now, as we just saw, you can actually do everything with just an up button. You don't need a down button, but it's nice to have. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so what issues do we see with the down button logic that we can borrow from Travel Window? All right, we want to double check if we're at the maximum item. Cool. So let's come on in and get some of that same stuff. We have the local old index equals. So we're going to borrow that. We're going to have local new index equals, and that's old index plus 1 this time. Don't try to move the bottommost item down. So if new index is greater or equals to, and then what is the max item? Well, that's an excellent question. Do we have a get item count? We do have a good item count. Great. So we can say self.anthem priority list box get item count. Then return end. So we preemptively have dealt with that problem. Now we just come on in. And we have the swap list box items. Great, we've got the list box. We're going to go ahead and do old index, and we're going to go ahead and do new index. And again, the logic is no longer in line with the function call, just old and new. The logic is right here, and I feel like that makes it a lot easier to look at and think about. All right, we have swap list, and then we want to come back in. In fact, reselecting the index feels like such an important thing that we want to hoist that into the swap list box items. You never want to come out of a swap list box item and have lost that selectedness. So let's go ahead and say selection is lost when items are added / removed. Reselect that the new location. And we can say second index. Now in here we're calling them first index and second index. We could just as easily call them old index and new index. Since we're conceptually thinking of them that way in other locations, that might be a good idea to do. Lord Zax wants to keep moving the same item up or down. Yeah, exactly. If we're in here and we say up, we want to just keep pressing the up button. We don't want to have to reselect it every time. That's just not very user-friendly at all. But yeah, now that we're thinking about this in terms of old and new instead of first and second, let's just come on in here and say first index is now old index. Old index. And we had second index, that's now new index. Cool. And that'll be a little bit more fluent with the ideas we're trying to express. First and second, don't care about it. Where was it and where is it going? That's what we want. Now, I'm a little bit curious if this logic works with bigger gaps than just one. I feel like there's some edge cases happening where maybe they wouldn't be taken into account. And so I'm actually come in here and say the step value is 2. We're going to add 2 or subtract 2. Because I'm curious what happens. So war should be before compassion. Oh, it is. Okay. Prowess should be for distance. Nice. And then, of course, you would just need to, whoops, shoot it off the end there, and that's sad. Um, okay, so the twos is not working at the edges as well as we want it to, but that's working really well. So it's just it's very nice. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to just going one step at a time. Distance goes up, distance goes down. Let's bring it all the way down. Okay, so we have an off by one error. We're not able to bring an anthem to the very end. Off by one errors are easy. We just want that to be if new index is greater than item count. So unload, reload, and let's bring it back in. War, down, down, down. Now we're stopping, and all the way back up, and all the way back down. If I was doing a lot with listbox, I would definitely want to extract this idea of a resortable listbox, reorderable listbox into its own class. This is kind of a one-off here, but I like the idea of having a listbox that knows how to move stuff around. I would also really consider, if I was waving a magic wand and didn't have to do any of the work, I think travel window would benefit from swapping. If you have a move to top option, don't consecutively move it up and down. Just pull it out and put it in at the very top. There may be reasons why they're not doing that, but I don't know what they are. Okay, we have an up button, we have a down button. This is great. And the only other thing is if we are at the top, if our new index for up is at the top, then we do want to disable the up button. And same thing for the down. And we also want that to update these when the selected changes. So two things. I guess it would be helpful just to have a function for this, right? So if we have a function, option window, update buttons enabled, update priority buttons enabled, and we're just going to go ahead and call this from each of those three places. So whenever you click on it, self update priority buttons enabled, whenever you move up, whenever you move down. This is slightly less efficient maybe than doing it in place because we're going to have to again get the current index and the min and the max, that kind of thing. But this is happening in response to someone clicking things, so we have a little leeway. Excellent question from Lord Zach. Does Lua let you do drag and drop? Lua has the concept of drag begin, drag end, draggable things. And you can see that in UIs, plugin UIs that let you drag and drop things like skills and plugin items and whatnot. But in that case, LOTRO is definitely doing some of the drag drop for you. But no, drag drop is an option, and that's definitely a UI I would want to support, is clicking and dragging one of these things. But that's a whole extra level of complexity on top of just basic moving things up and down. Also, I don't think I would want to get rid of the up and down buttons, because if you have any sort of mobility issues where doing precise drag and drops is a challenge, then having the ability just to click a button, even if it's repeatedly, short circuits that whole thing. You no longer have to aim for a specific target. And I know that can be a challenge for some people, so I would want to keep the up and down buttons anyway. Lord Black says, I'm surprised that LOTRO lets you modify the UI within Plugin Manager. There is a bit of a sandbox thing going on here. If there's a special way a plugin can say, LOTRO, here is the control to put in the options panel for my plugin. So whenever you go to a plugin, if you have done that, options is enabled. You can click on it and it just displays the control that you gave it. So you're not doing anything specifically with the Plugin Manager window. You are contained within the Plugin Manager window instead. Agartha says the drag and drop API methods only apply to things already in the game, right? Not UI elements you create yourself. Well, if I come on into turbine.ui.control, sort of the base thing for doing stuff, and just do a search for drag, get allow drop is there. Set allow drop, drag drop, drag drop, drag enter, drag leave, drag start. These are all present on the base control class. And so anything that you derive from that, which you have to in order to be a UI element, is going to implicitly have some basic drag drop ability. Beyond that, I am not sure. So I know these are present, but I don't know to what extent that means you can support arbitrary drag dropping. So it's a good question, Agartha. I feel like that's a thing to play around with later. Like I said, if I added that in here, and I think it's a good idea, I think it'd be great for a window like Travel Window that's so big to add support to. So this can be a fun little sandbox to play around in. But while I would want to add support for drag and drop, I would also want to keep the up and down buttons. So we're not doing any wasted effort here. Okay. All of that being said, now we just want to say, basically, if selected is, if first item is selected, disable up. If last item is selected, disable down. Otherwise, disable up and enable down. Disable down and enable up. Otherwise, enable down and up and down. All right. That's easy enough to do. If, I guess we need a couple of variables first. So we want to go ahead and grab that selected position. Well, we already have that. We can actually lift that out of this function here. So local index equals get selected index. Great. We also want the max, so that get item count, which I hope is a big O constant kind of function where it just knows how many. I hope it doesn't have to go through and count them every time you call that. But for 7 items, I'm not concerned either way. So item count equals that. So we have the index, we have the item count. If we really wanted to, we could have a minimum, a min count of 1. Sure, let's do that. Local first item index equals 1. We can actually say last. Well, that's the item count. We could even say last item index equals item count. And now we can do the logic on here. If index is less than or equal to 1, then else if index is greater than last item index, greater than or equal to, else end. And I'm missing my then there, which is causing tabbing issues. Okay. Let's go ahead and put those comments back into place. All right, so what do we have? If index is less than or equal to 1, then self.up button set enabled. Yep, true. Oh, sorry, false. And we also have the down button that we're going to set to true. I'm half tempted to set the state to a variable, capture that in a variable, up status or up enabled, down enabled equals true, false, whatever, and then maybe simplify the logic that way. Let's write the logic out first, and then see how we'd simplify it down. So, otherwise, we're going to go ahead and set enabled to true and false, and otherwise, we're going to go ahead and set them both to true. So that's spelling it out. Let's go ahead and see how that works. Okay, I've selected the first one, I've selected the last one, can't click down, can't click up. We're on war, we go up, up, up. Now the button is disabled. Bring it on down, 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 down. Lovely. I love it when the logic just works the first try. But what about what we were talking about? So I might say local up is up enabled equals true. A local is down enabled equals true. And at the end, go ahead and set these to the result of our logic. So up button set enabled is up enabled. Down button set enabled is down enabled. But then we only care about those times when they are not true. So if the index is less than or equal to 1, then is up enabled equals false. Get rid of the rest of this. If the index is greater to or equal the last item. Oh, hey, first item index. There we go. Is it greater than or equal to the last item index? Then is down enabled equals false. There is no else because they're already set to true. And we can just hoist that up. Default to true. Enabled. First item selected, disable up. There's no enabling down, it's defaulted to enabled. Disable down and enable up, get rid of that. If last time was selected, disable down, first time selected, disable up, and we can see how much easier the logic is and how much shorter it is. They're going to be true. Oh, this one's false. Oh, this one's false. Set them to whatever it ended up as. Done. So a lot less logic and hopefully a lot easier to look at and say, yes, I think that's correct. And if we come on in here, ideally, we're going to see that the logic still works. Awesome. So that's just a nicety. You don't have to turn the buttons gray if you can't actually use the button, but I like it when the UI can reflect what you can do. You can't move the bottom item more down. It just doesn't work. Nice. All right, that swap items debug line is looking pretty unnecessary now. Okay, we have a UI where a player can come in and arbitrarily sort these anthems in a priority listing. And we can then use that later to determine which anthems do you have, what's your priority, what's the next anthem that you should do in that list. Awesome. Let's go ahead and take a snapshot using our source control of what we've got so far, and maybe check to see if anything inadvertently slipped into the code while we were playing around with debugging. To do that, we're going to go ahead and come into our source control. This is fork. You can find it at fork.dev. I believe it's a free program and very handy. And we're going to come on in. And we're not looking at the minstrel effects yet. That was a preemptive change, but we'll come on into the options window. First thing that we can do is we can take a snapshot of these color changes. Okay, use variables for list box colors. Okay, so we're going to come on in. We're going to commit the colors themselves. Where else? This is all new, so we don't need to worry about that. This place where we had a set back color, we're going to go ahead and stage that. And down here in the handler, we're going to go ahead and use those colors there. So just the changes that are for this look like this. We have list item unselected. Oh, sure. More water sounds great. List item unselected, yep. List item selected, yep. And a list box background. Perfect. All three of those are used and used just where we want them. So use variables for list box colors. Get it out of here. Coming on back into the option window. Now those changes are committed, snapshotted, so we're only seeing the other things. Now we're seeing this change here of maybe we don't need to create the thing twice. I'm pretty happy with that so far. So let's go ahead and finish it up here so we can remove all this commented code. Okay. Then we have the control height, debug options heights. We're setting that size and replacing the control, and we have a way to get at that control. So we can go ahead and commit that as its own little change. Only have one, only create options control once. Okay. Great, we can commit that, come back in and see what other changes did we do. Now, some people, when they're doing a big project, they might just commit all the changes all at once. It's a lot easier, but this granular kind of committing can be very useful. For one thing, it kind of makes you think about what am I putting into the code base here? Did I mean to do this? Was this for debug purposes? Is it still necessary? And the other thing is, sometimes there's stuff you definitely don't want being committed in there. This show debug options equals true. I don't want to push that out into the world at large. That's just for me to play around with the stuff. And so not all the changes necessarily should be committed, and doing them in logical chunks makes it easier to kind of review for, was this intentional? Makes it easier to undo it if something went wrong. Or if you're like, oh man, that was a really awesome set of changes, I would love to use it over in this other plugin. You had them all isolated. Right after you got done doing them and thinking about them, you were able to put them into a single chunk, and now you can take that chunk and use it as inspiration for other tasks. Instead of just being like, well, it was one of those 750 lines of change that I did 6 months ago. So I guess I'm just reinventing that from scratch, because there's no way I'm going to piece through all of these changes that were mashed together into one go. So I highly encourage you, if you can, take advantage of these modern tools that let you do even line by line commits. Oh, I just want to commit those 2 lines right now. Obviously that's not right, but lets you be very granular with your changes and commit logical chunks together, but not more than you need for a single correct chunk of stuff. So this function, add anthem priority control, okay, that's not sufficient. I'll also add the thing that uses it. Update priority buttons enable, sounds good, that's a part of it. Swap list box items, that's all good. We're going to stage that in here. And add the control, there we go. And what else do we have here? Anthem priority changed. Yeah, we also needed that. Now, real question, what does that look like down here? Okay, just the added function. Oh, I see. I deleted a space, and it is confusing. Oh, it's actually a tab, even more heinous. All right, we're going to go ahead and undo that white space change for a minute, and that makes the diff a lot more obvious what's happening. We added anthem priority changed. Okay. So in that case, yes, everything in here was good. The thing to add the anthem priority control, the way to update the buttons, swapping the 2 list box items, that could be a more generic function. We started that process by passing in the list box, but it's fine where it is right now. Adding it to the UI and having logic to update the color of the line. Oh, and I thought about updating whether or not up or down buttons are enabled. I don't think that's necessary anymore. We're going to come in here and save that. Oops. All right, so come on in. That last function, and again, that's just next to the previous set theme index, or the previous function anthem priority changed. There was a function that went with, and we're good. That's a lovely set of changes. Add UI for anthem priority. Add options UI for anthem priority. The rest of this is not needed for that. Great. But oh wait, maybe it is needed for that. What are we putting into the anthem priority? Set text to V. Yes, anthems for priority selection. Okay, we did need this. In that case, we need to go in and set this up in English and also French and German. So I'm going to make the window a little bit wider here so we can just look at the text of it and bring in the German and the French. And what are we looking at here? We're looking at first these variables before used for anthems. Yep. So we need these variables to be equal to whatever in both of these. There we go. We'll update those in a moment. And we need an anthems for priority selection. And the funny thing is, do we need that? I mean, that's a default. All right, well, we need it for this latest set of commits. I think that's fine. To do replace with a table in settings. That's fine. All right, so we're going to come in here. That's right before valid personal anthem effects. And here as well. So it's going into the language files. We're going to pull it back out of there when we're ready. But this will at least let the UI show up in any language that we support. But we need to do the same thing here where we're replacing the hard-coded anthem names. And so let's take a look at that. Anthem 1 lesser resonance. That should be this one here. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and use that and then use the variable. Great. Hymn de Mitgevoels. I guess that's compassion. That's going to come in here. And then resonance and compassion. Well, conveniently, we're not dealing with that right now, but that hasn't been localized yet. All right, Anthem 2 dissonance. We're going to come on in, and that is the Hymn de Dritten Zeitaltars. Cool. Zeitaltars. Oh, that must be the translation of age. Sure. All right, the Hymns de Krieges. Great, that's the Anthem of War. And then finally the last two. 3. Anthem of Composure. Great. The Anthem of Prowess. And finally the Anthem of 3 People. So if I didn't mess that up, we now have hoisted out those names, and we can do the same for resonance, compassion, all those if we ever needed to. But right now specifically, we need those so we can refer to them generically so that we know, oh no, interesting. You know, I said replace with the table in settings. I think we need both. I think we need an authoritative list of in settings, because we don't want to save the name of the anthem. That's just asking for trouble. So in settings, if I say the first priority is Anthem 3, that authoritatively means this anthem. So instead, this anthem's priority selection needs to go somewhere else. It might actually need to go into settings, but it won't be a part of settings. Instead, or not a part of the settings object. Does settings make sense or options? Oh, what an interesting question. Let's start with options. But does it go in options? We're going to use the settings compared to this. Maybe it makes more sense in settings. All right, I'm going to change my mind at least 3 more times about this, but we're going to start with it in settings. And here, because we're using those language-specific strings, we can find the string that we need for each one based off the index. So, index 3 is first. Okay, that's anthem to lesser dissonance. Okay. I'm going to say that's good. Not in the options. It's not going to go into the language file. It's the same for every language file. That's a good sense that you didn't need to put it in the language file. It's a good sign of that. And instead, we're just going to do that. So, same thing with the French. Sometimes these changes just take a little time, and you don't want to mess that up. So we're going to come in and do anthem resonance. Great. Hymn de compassion. Sounds French. All right. Anthem to dissonance is being replaced by dissonance. Then we have war. Continence instead of composure. We're also going to do prowess. And finally, the Anthem of the Free Peoples. I was looking up something for a Dutch language class the other day, and it's just a reminder of how much more in proximity France and French is to the Netherlands than it is maybe to America, to the United States. But I was looking up, I think, etc., or the Dutch version, enzovoort, and saying, etc. You can use that in Dutch also, and it comes from the French, etc. And I having done Latin in high school, was like, sure, it comes from the French, etc., but they both come from the Latin, etc. But they're just, there's a lot of borrowed words from French in Dutch, which totally makes sense. It's just like 2 countries away, maybe 3 if you count Belgium. it's not that far. A couple hours by train. And so, yeah, sure, etc. probably came to the Netherlands through French instead of through Latin. Why not? It was one of those things like, oh yeah, fair enough. Why not? Okay, so let's take a look at those changes that we did within the context of a file comparison. All right, so we can kind of bit back and forth between them, and we can see that we've changed the text in these variable names. But one of the neat things is we can see these tables are getting much more unified. Anthem 1 lesser, Anthem 1 greater. These tables are starting to not be language dependent. If we did this a few more times, the valid anthem effects would stop being in the language file completely. We would just make reference instead to those variables somewhere else. Thank you, Little Redhead. Yes, Netherlands, Belgium to France, Netherlands, Germany to France, super close. I suppose you could go in a twisty-turny way and go through Luxembourg as well. Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium, France. Okay. Neat. So this isn't quite ready to be hoisted out, but that's definitely a thought, is why is this in a language file if we can just have language-specific values? And then same thing with all these others. All these other ones start becoming much less meaningful. Well, that's a tomorrow problem, or more specifically, a later problem. All right, well, it's been a while since I mentioned it. Not to beat that too much, but Little Redhead is raising money for children's hospitals. The Boston Children's Hospital specifically, I believe, is the goal the target hospital for SSG's Extra Life fundraising. If you like the idea of donating money to children or children's hospitals, this is a way to do it, and you can click that link in chat and donate any amount of money. I hear money is good, and people like money. All right, so coming on in to file comparison, we can convince ourselves that we've changed what we wanted to change and nothing else, and that this anthems for priority, which is used in code we've already committed, needs to be part of this post haste. So added missing anthems for priority selection table includes variables for language dependent anthem names. Hey, there's a cat. Good job, cat. That is Kato. She is maybe the more adventuresome of the two. Right now, Casper, however, is sitting on the back of Littlehead's chair, even though there is no tuna available. I think he's just forgotten to get down at this point. Okay, we're going to go ahead and commit that change, and now we're back to having essentially a clean working directory, which is great because we need to go break stuff. Okay, and when I say break stuff, I mean specifically we need to be able to save and load the order that we have put these in. Yeah. Well, Zach observed the cat.
She's actually been there for quite a while.
Nice. Good job, Kato. We put that in the corner there, and they are able to move from there, to the bookshelf and onto the bookcase and onto the other bookshelf. But they don't do it very often, and I don't know if it's because it's so dusty up there that it means like mandatory bath time, or if they just aren't really sure about it. We'll see what comes over the next few months. Okay, in the options window, we need a way to say what order are these in. It doesn't have to be a good method. Again, there's only 7 items. We just need to get out of here a list of these authoritative indices. And for that, we need this order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's the default order. If it's in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 6, we need to get that order out. So we're looking for a function, option window, get anthem priority order, and expected output, a table that looks like this. And we're just doing a little bit of a block comment here. And so we're looking for, like, the first one is 7. The second one is 2. And so on until the 7th one equals, 1, 3, it doesn't matter. So each one of those items, let's go ahead and bring that over. Each one of these 7 items should show up, and we want them in an explicitly ordered list because otherwise it's difficult to keep them in any sort of order. So we're going to go ahead and just have a simple lookup table. Now, is that easy to do? Well, I don't know. We have a list box. Let's find out. We have a turbine.uedit list box. What we want to do is iterate through each of the things in this list box and check it out. Now we could see that in the move top button, we saw a while loop. It doesn't seem like a good thing for what we're looking for. Let's think instead of a for loop. Do we have any examples of for loops? We do. Great. Let's get an iterator, absolutely. Now, what I'm concerned about is that we're just going to have to do textual matching to get that index again. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but that's not a sender, that is a self dot anthem priority list box. same thing. We're going to get that item. Lord Zach, I agree with you. I also like doing for each in C#, and Lua, I think, does not have exactly a for each. For each. Yeah. There's for, like you can do a for IV and I paired, blah, blah, blah. That's about the closest you get. But a for each is a lovely syntactical nicety. Okay, so we have the name of this thing, local name equals, and we have a list item, and that's going to be, actually we don't necessarily, right now we know this is a label, but we actually want this to be a control that has a label. And so now might be a time to make that adjustment. Because what we want, when we're adding this in, Anthem. Add Anthem priority control. That's what I want. When we're adding this in, we wanted this to be a combination control that has an image and a label on it. And if we're doing that, we can save off the index. We don't have to go backwards. So let's save ourselves some trouble. Local, this is a list item row equals, there's going to be a turbine.ui.control. And in that, we're going to go ahead and, first of all, we're going to set the size. So the size of that label, that's actually what we want the whole row to be. Awesome. And we don't need to set the position. Setting the text, no, not text limit, no. Okay, so instead of adding a label, we're going to add the item row, and this thing, we're going to go ahead and set a parent. Label set parent to be list item row. And the position is going to default to 0, 0 within the control. That's fine. Agartha says there used to be a table.forEach in Lua, apparently deprecated now in favor of for ... Was that in 5.1? 4.1? Lua for ... in. Tell me more. Oh yeah, for that in pairs. Yeah, okay, yeah. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so we have a row set size. We're setting the parent of the label to the row. In fact, I don't even like the name temp label at this point. We're going to go ahead and rename that to be list item label. Great. And we're adding that to the row, and the row is getting added as the item. Cool. Well, let's see if that even works. It does not. So many error messages. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, function. Okay, options window. Oh, I may have left a function incomplete here. I sure did. That's going to be a parsing problem. Great. Okay, but that means we're going to get a control out, and that control, if we save off this label, we could have access to that. If we save off something else, for instance, list item row dot anthem index equals key. Awesome, and now we have a way to hook into that index without having to go back and search, and an order n squared operation that would just make me cry. Yep, Lord Zach in chat says for k in pairs. Absolutely. Pairs and iPairs, it is important, I think, to remember, if I'm remembering the right one, that requires your table to be numerically indexed. No, this goes through all of them. Sorry. I forget pairs and iPairs. But watch out if you're iterating through a table that's not numerically indexed, or is a combination of numerical and index. Oh, the pound, that's what I'm thinking. If you use the octothorpe to try and get the length of the array, that's going to depend on whether or not it's numerically indexed from one to end. And as soon as you have a gap in that ordering, even if you have more items, it stops. Okay. So we have the Anthem index property. So let's come on down here to here, and we have the anthem index equals, and we can use that list item dot anthem index. Now this is going to throw an error here because we haven't told the IntelliSense, not an error, it's going to be a warning. We haven't told IntelliSense that this is anything other than a control. Now, there's a way to annotate it. I happen to know that there's a way to annotate it so that this is nice. The easiest way I can think of is just make a little function, a getter, that has this and is annotated to return a whatever it is you want. Now, we didn't make a class, so that's not great. Okay. Oh, Ordereth says, just joined for the first time. Well, welcome. Gotta say, I love the cat palace in the background. Thank you. Yeah, the cats, I don't know if they love it, but they definitely use it from time to time. They're on it and off it. They really like our couches and chairs where they'll just sleep all day, and who can blame them? Well, welcome. If you are new here, then this is Plugging Along, a Lord of the Rings Online adjacent stream where we talk about plugin design, development, and usage in Lord of the Rings Online. The cat palace uses one CPU core. Of the cat or of the room? I don't follow that metaphor. Okay, so we have an Anthem index, or at least we know that we're going to get an Anthem index out of here. And so what we want to do is we want to do a table add, probably. So I happen to know Lua has a table.add style function. What I don't remember is, does that end up with a table with numerical indexes? I think it does. We'll find out. So we have table insert. Awesome. So local anthem priority equals a table. We're going to go ahead and table.insert, and that's going to be anthem priority and anthem index. I don't like those names at all. In fact, I think they're opposite of what I want them to be. Maybe not opposite. Anthem priority list and individual anthem priorities. What do you want? Okay. And then we can just return anthem priority list. Zach says, apparently you can even write your own iterators. Yeah, there's so much about Lua that I'm just a little ignorant of, because I'm not using this as my day language. I'm using it for fun for Lord of the Rings Online's plugins. And so if I don't need it and I don't see another plugin using it, it can just remain a mystery for me for a long time. And then I see a plugin doing something, I'm like, wait a second, what is that? And then it's like, oh, cool, that's a new technique I can use. And then I borrow egregiously from that plugin. Okay, we have a function that might even work, who can say. And so what we want to do is try this out. So we're going to go ahead and call this function each time we change with up or down. And we're going to hook into that with the update priority. Boy, did I misspell priority buttons, as it turns out. Update priority buttons. Yeesh. Spell check would be my friend. Okay, so we want to come into update priority buttons enabled, and we'll just go ahead and do this here. So this is just a debug test this function. And we're going to go ahead and local order equals self get that. And then, yeah, okay. And then we'll just go ahead and spit that out to the console. Lord Zach, there's a code spell checker you can install. Yeah, I actually am struggling with one of those in a work project that I'm working on, because I'll submit a change and then it'll fail the linter for spell check. And it's like, but I didn't put that error in there. That is someone else's error. Why are you failing on my commit? Doesn't matter. It's less on a single project, but just like, I want the spell check, but without the failure to build. But that's not my call. Okay. Okay, so we have a local order. Do we have some sort of a dump function in the general functions? We do. Great. So turbine.shell.writeLine dump order, because I want to see the table. And by default, writing a table out just gives you like the table address. Oh, underwater. You tried to post something. Maybe Little Redhead can repost that in your name. Unfortunately, Chatty just cuts things off after a certain point. And I don't know how to make it show up in Chatty.
Marketplace Visual Studio?
Yeah.
You want that?
Underwater, yeah. We'll get that sorted out. Visual Studio Code spell checker plugin link incoming. Awesome. Looks like there's some Google highlighting included in that link. Feel free to remove everything after the octothorpe. All right, so that would look like this. Code spell checker. Oh, and that's what Lord Zach was looking at as well. Sweet. And, Google and probably other search engines have started doing a thing where they'll do text highlighting. And so everything after that octothorpe that you're seeing, that was probably part of the little snippet that they were showing you as the preview. You can just right click and say remove to get rid of it. Or you can just manually remove everything octothorpe and after. But yeah, it does tend to make the URLs gibberishy because it includes all the text that you're highlighting, which is, that's fun. It's one of those features that you can turn off, and I often do, and then I forget which have I turned it off on my phone or my computer or what, and so half the time I'm getting highlighting and half the time I'm not, and I need to sort that out. Okay, so we are getting that, we're dumping it out. Let's go ahead and test that out. All right, prowess, up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5, 7. Oh, that looks nice. Up, up, up. Okay, so we can see. Oh, that's happening twice. I'm not a fan of that. Oh well. Okay, so we can see it went from 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Okay, so 1 equals 4, 2 equals 1. Let's go ahead and get resonance down. So 1 equals 4, 2 equals 2, 3 equals 1. This is looking great. Anthem of Free Peoples, let's move that on up. We can see it scrolling as it comes up. Oh, that's so good. Okay, so we have a function that returns a number indexed table, 1 through 7, and the values of those are our internal, kind of official, what is the thing. And so we can work backwards from that. Once we have the indices that correspond to this anthems for priority selection table, we can then populate a UI matching that. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and get this anthem priority order. Yeah, we need to go ahead and save coming from here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this debug. Let's come on in. We have a get anthem priority order function. We need to save it. Option window, save anthem priority order. Save might be the wrong, get anthem priority into settings that will be saved later, maybe. But we have that. We know the debug, the output is doing great. What we want to do is find a place in settings for this. But it might be easier to come take a look at the save file. So let's come on in to Lord of the Rings Online. We're going to come into plugin data, account, server, character name, and then we have the MinstrelBuff.plugin file. In here, we have key, value, key, value, key, value, key, value. So what we're going to imagine is that there's going to be an anthem priority key, and in that is going to be this table of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Fun. Let's see what we can do about that. So we're going to come on into the settings. And the first thing we want to do is go ahead and have a default value. So set default if missing. We need something like that, but let's see. Add anthem priority if missing. So if let's see, what does set default if missing do? Yep, pretty much that. So we want to go ahead and if self.settings table anthem priority, something like that anyway, then we're going to go ahead and set this to be a new table with a value 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2, 3 equals 3, and so on. 4 equals 4, 5 equals 5. Now, it might be useful to have this be defined somewhere else and we just copy it in, but it feels so simple to do this. In fact, I almost kind of want to make this into a little loop. Nope, it's fine. For now, I'm going to be unhappy with it. And t minus 5 minutes. But for now, it's fine. Okay, so if there wasn't an anthem priority in there, put it in there. Now we can see this in play just by loading and unloading the plugin. And then if we come back into the file, he said optimistically. I was expecting that to do that. What am I missing? Let's come take a look. Self.settings table. Yep, save. If that goes into MinstrelBuff, yeah. There is no anthem priority. If it equals to nil, yeah. Let's, just for kicks, let's go ahead and move this up in the function closer to where all the other defaults were. I don't think that actually matters in this case, but it was a thought I had earlier.
She's looking at the picture.
That's a good picture. I hope she's looking at it. Or are you looking at that reflection? Well, that's interesting. Why do we suppose we're not seeing the default value being put into there? We're in the settings load. Settings load is happening. Well, when in doubt, turbine.shell.writeLine, adding, checking, anthem priority. And then if it's equal to nil, we're going to come in and adding anthem priority. And ideally, we're going to see both of those. Yep, checking, adding. So one has to wonder, if we're coming in here, let's come on into the add anthem priority, and just for kicks, settings, yeah, turbine.shell.writeLine, self.settings table, and we want to dump that because it is a table. Let's see what happens. Fascinating. So it's definitely not getting in there. Okay. Well, why? We're going to do the same thing, dumping self-setting tables. Pre and post. Okay, so we had a pre here. We had a post here with Anthem priority in it. And then later on, we did not have it in there. So I'm obviously adding it to the wrong thing. Excellent. This is a me problem. Self, set default if missing. Let's come back into that. Self settings table, key equals nil. Yes. So this is a settings load. Settings save. Where else are we looking at settings table? Get setting. Okay, could definitely be using the get setting and the set setting. Huh. Well, that's just boggling my mind. I must be doing something wrong because this table is not behaving correctly. Anthem priority. Yes. Equals that. That is in post, and then we come on down here, and it is... No, there it is. What's going on here? Semicolon on last. Well, there is that. Lua is pretty forgiving about mixing semicolons and commas in tables, but I'll go ahead and disable it just in case. Anthem priority is there. 6, 2, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. They're all there. They're all a jumble. That's normal. That's expected. If I can just... And hello, Lunar Water in chat. Okay, so what's going on between there and here where I'm dumping out the stupid thing? Let's get setting. And that is... Anthem priority. Oh, it is there. So why is this not getting saved, I suppose? Is there a problem with saving tables? Let's find out. Let's come into save. Alright, settings is not null. We want to save this. Self.settings table. Let's dig on into patch data save here. This is a wrapping around plugin data save. Yes. We're also doing a conversion. Let's take a look at conversion safe object. We have a sub one here. Okay. If it's table, then we're going to go ahead and do the table. Yeah. If it's number, then do that. If it's not equal string, then return that. And then we do string stuff. Shouldn't be a problem. Well, let's remove some of these. Okay, discard that. Some of these right lines here. Okay, unload, reload, and unload. Oh, interesting. It doesn't save on unload. Unplug it after save to ensure written to disk. Yeah, so I forgot MinstrelBuff does this thing where it doesn't actually save settings when you unload. I got into this trouble earlier. In fact, that's what this here is. If it was not correct, then we write save. And so if the only thing you do is fix up the file and nothing else, then it doesn't actually get saved. And that's not terrible, actually. Yeah, so LinearWater, unload plugin after save to ensure written to disk immediately, otherwise it wait until it wants. Yeah, that's why I keep hitting unload all and load on the plugin manager to force a save, because I'm so used to plugins that save when you make a change. And instead, if I had just come in here and made any change to the options, that would have triggered a save. And so I think this is fine in general for a plugin to not try to save stuff when you unload it. There are some plugin authors who think that there's a corruption issue that comes up, or have seen a corruption issue come up. I haven't seen that personally. Fingers crossed, I continue to not see it. But that's it's fine to only save when something changes, and then you don't have to. Then if you have a crashed desktop with LOTRO or something else, then you don't lose that information. But it does mean that if we do this thing, then we might want to do save. I think it's fine not to, because we'll just do it again, and then it's just a question of did it change or not. Okay. I was just, oh my goodness. Lord Zach says, in my opinion, you shouldn't save on quit, because someone could Alt F4. That's a point. If you close LOTRO in an unexpected way, plugins may not get the signal to save things. And so if you have important things to save them early, I think is the good thing. I think Deed Tracker still tries to save things when you log out, just in case. But if you complete a deed or do something of that nature, it goes ahead and saves out deed progress soon after you complete the deed. So if you complete a deed and then another one and then another one, you don't get 3 saves, but it just sets up a reminder to, oh, as soon as we stop completing deeds, go ahead and save. Yeah. Okay, so set this up, and then don't worry about it. Note. Save does... Actually, that's going in here. Note. Save does not happen on plugin unload. If you make a change that should be saved, call save. LinearWater says, save and load have a callback, which gets called when they finish. Most plugins aren't looking at that, though. Absolutely. And I believe, I want to say that callback is only active if you do save or load while a plugin is running, in the running state. Like if you do it when the plugin is being loaded or unloaded, I don't think that callback actually does anything, maybe? I'd have to go back and test. But we have plugin data, load and save, and you have the data load event handler. So absolutely, if you're trying to load or save files while you are running, there's like a 5 or 10 second delay. Excellent question from Peter in chat. Let me finish my thought on this callback, and I'll get right back to you. Okay, so the data load event handler may not actually have anything useful if you're doing it during load or unload. I would have to double check on that. But during a plugin loading, to prevent being a problem for your running game, you have like a 5 to 10 second delay between when you try to load something or save something and when it actually is loaded or saved. And you can specify, please call this function when you're done with that. If you're just firing off a save, probably don't worry about it. It's just nice to know it happened. But otherwise, if you're trying to load data like map data or plugin data or whatever, you say, please load, call this function when you're done, and that callback gets called later. Cool. Okay. So, excellent question from Peter. Could you please let me know how you can reload your plugin so quickly in-game? I would like to dabble in plugin development as well. Well, the very simple way to do it is using the plugin manager. Just hit the load and unload button. So hit load, I've hit unload, I've hit load. It gets kind of annoying if you have multiple plugins that you want to have loaded. So the second thing is your plugin can specify that it wants to be a part of an apartment. So in your .plugin file, let me make sure that's not being covered up. Okay. In your .plugin file, you can specify a configuration tag with an apartment name. And this is important because LOTRO cannot unload a plugin. It can only unload an apartment, tearing down everything in that apartment, whether it's one plugin or 10 or 100. Now, every plugin gets the default general whatever apartment if it doesn't specify a different one. And so if you come in and do a /plugins space list command, you're going to get a list of all the plugins that are available, the plugins that are loaded, and if they are part of an apartment, what the apartment name is. And so another thing you can do is /plugins space unload space apartment name, MinstrelBuff. Cool, it's unloaded. Unfortunately, you can't see that typing because it's just underneath me. There we go. Okay, so you can see that /plugin space unload space MinstrelBuff. You can do the same thing. /plugin space load space, not the apartment name, but the actual name of the plugin, MinstrelBuff space II in this case, and you can load. So we have textual commands, and what can you do with text commands? You can bind them to one of your skill slots. So if we look at these skill slots and imagine they are numbered 1 through 12, 13 through 24, 25 through 36, so number 37 is this open slot here, you can go ahead and assign a shortcut to that spot that does the thing that we just did. So if we say /shortcut, actually I think it's alias? No, shortcut. So if I say shortcut, and what was that number I just said? All right. 12, 24, 36, 37, location 37, and the string we want. So /plugin space load space MinstrelBuff II. Let's do that with double quotes. Now, with the spaces, that could be a problem. Yeah. Let's go ahead and see if we can run it with single quotes to make it happy. No. Okay, so loading the plugin could be a bit of a problem because I have a space in the name and I forget how to do spaces in names. Simple thing is don't have a space in your name. So if we say the one bag, for instance, we can go ahead and do shortcut. Oh, maybe I was doing the wrong thing. I was not. Okay, so if that is shortcut plugin load the one bag, then we can just click on this to load the plugin. Or am I doing something wrong? I might be doing something wrong. I am doing /plugin instead of /plugins, aren't I? Yeah. Okay, so everything I just said might be wrong. Let's come back in here. MinstrelBuff II. Plugins load. Can I do double quotes? Okay, so the space definitely is causing problems. If I go ahead, yes, I might be spelling things wrong. That could also be a problem. But unload, you can do the same thing where you do an unload and you just do the name of the apartment. And so in this case, /plugins space unload space MinstrelBuff. And so when MinstrelBuff is loaded, you can just have a button that unloads it. And so if there's no space in your plugin name, you can easily load and unload. And if you're just doing it for testing, yeah, just rename your plugin. It's super easy. So if I come in here, MinstrelBuff II, no space, go ahead and refresh here. And then go ahead and do a shortcut. We're going to do space 38 now, /shortcut space 38 space /plugins space load space MinstrelBuff II. Now we can load and unload this thing super fast, right? And so that's that. If I need to rapidly load and unload a plugin because of whatever reason, and I don't want to mess with the UI up here. Maybe it takes up too much screen space. Then that's my next step, is just assign some shortcuts with the /shortcut command. You just have to figure out what number they're going into. And so for me, I have all my bars in a row, so it's just 12, 24, 36. Okay, this must be spot 37 and 38. And then the text that you're doing, /plugins space load or unload space name. And remember that you're loading the plugin name, you're unloading the apartment name. These might be the same things. Often they're very close. So for instance, if I load the travel window, and then I do a /plugins space list, we can see travel space window space 2 has an apartment name of travel window 2. And that's actually a really important thing. Apartment names, I don't think can have spaces. It messes with it. The apartment name stops when it hits the first space. So don't use spaces in your apartment names. Underscores might be okay. But in general, a lot of people will use the name of the plugin, but without spaces. Cool. Okay. Chromite asks, would it break anything if you edited a .plugin file and manually added an apartment for plugins that don't have it? So in general, I would say I don't think so. Being in an apartment means that your LOTRO client is going to spend more memory because it's going to have separate stuff just for that plugin, instead of just using the general global namespace. And so if your plugin relies on being in the general namespace in order to interact with some other plugin that is also in the global namespace, then that would break that, Chromite. But assuming a plugin is not doing something wonky like that, then no, I think you could definitely add a plugin, especially for development. It's only if one plugin is trying to interact with another plugin and taking advantage that they're in the same apartment, then maybe that could cause a problem for that plugin. You would want them both to be in the same apartment then, maybe. I haven't done that. This is just a theoretical guess at that point. Okay, Peter says, thank you so much for that thorough explanation. You are welcome. Yeah, first step, you can just hit load and unload in the UI here. Second step, you can use aliases, shortcuts, I should say. And you can also have plugins that know how to kind of unload and load themselves. Okay, Bim's in chat. Wait, this is a plugin stream? How long has it been running? Are plugins actually getting some love? I certainly love plugins. I've been doing Plugin Along here pretty regularly, and I will be back, of course, next week. We're coming up towards the end of this stream here. So I stream on Tuesdays at, whatever time it is, server time. Let's see. Apparently it is 10 p.m. local time. Thanks for that. I'm so used to Titan Bar telling me what time it is server time. What is it? I think it's 6 p.m. now, so I must stream at 3:30-ish, 4 o'clock. There we go. I start between 1:30 and 2 and stream until around 4 p.m. server time. That sounds right. Thank you, Little Redhead. So yes, I certainly love plugins, and there's certainly there are certainly plugin developers who are active, and if you go over to the LOTROinterface.com website, you'll see this sidebar with new and updated plugins changing pretty often. So I released MinstrelBuff II a week or two ago, and we can see there's already been, half a dozen or more different updates to different plugins by people who are not me. Obviously, other plugin developers are active. And so I can't speak for what goes on in the secret hearts of SSG. I am not an SSG employee, but they have a lot on their table, and I think if some of them would like to make the Lua API better, but I don't think it's an active priority for anyone at SSG right now. They just have so much other stuff that they're interested in doing. And the overlap between people who might be able to help with technical issues like old server restorations and lag reduction and these other technical things there's a probably pretty large overlap between those people and the types of people who would be interested in addressing Lua issues or adding Lua functionality. So yeah, I don't think it's on anyone's active radar for multiple reasons, but I would love for them to circle back around to Lua on the LOTRO side when they get a chance to, sometime in the future when they address all these other things that are technically challenging. From things like adding access to the inside of carryalls. I've got some task carryalls here, and within the game, we can't have access to that yet. And so someday I would hope to see that added in. It's just not a today priority for them. Yes, Lord Zach, you do see MinstrelBuff II in the new and updated. It's there. It just other things are newer and more updated. So yes, pop on back every Tuesday at whatever time it was that I said, and between 1:30 and 2 p.m. at server time, and we'll talk more plugins. Lord Zach, you want to redo the crafting UI? That feels more like a skinning thing than a plugin thing. Depending on what you want to do. There's definitely skins out there that, for instance, these 3 buttons place on a single row. I really like that. That make the window bigger or change it in other layouts. I'm not a skinning person, really, but I know there's a lot of people out there who do like to change their skins around. Okay, so we wanted to see if we could save this updated order in the settings. I think we're really close to doing that. So let's see if we can get that done before the end of the stream here, which is nigh. Okay, so first of all, don't really want to change the name of the plugin. Let's go ahead and discard that change. Come back in, reload, unload all, come back in. Now we have the correct name here. All right, I do want to get that spelling mistake fix, and any place where priority was spelled with too few I's, let's get that staged in for a commit. All right, settings, great. We don't need that new line. Oops, nope, we don't need this new line here. That's line number 98. Get rid of that. We don't need the saving there. Awesome. We just need that. Yes. Added a note that save must be manually called. Great. Okay. Add it. Well, let's hold off on this until we confirm ourselves that we like that. Okay, what else is there? We want to save Anthem priority. All right, that's where we are. So coming back in to the options window, we have the order. We want to go ahead and do self.settings. And we're going to go ahead and set setting. And this is going to be Anthem priority, probably. The fact that this is a string instead of a variable kind of makes me sad. Bims in chat says, totally agree, found the documentation to it to be a bit wonky. Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve when it comes to doing these plugins. Would love to make some good plugins for the game as well. I'll definitely check you out later. Awesome. Would be glad to have you back. It's normally for 2 to 3 hours, depending on how distracted I get. And you're always welcome to pop in, pop out, and it'll also be available for viewing later, both on Twitch and on YouTube. Okay, we're coming up on the end here. Just in case anyone's interested in donating money for children's hospitals, you can support a little redhead who streamed it just before me. You can support her Extra Life donation drive at the link in chat. Okay, so we have a Anthem priority. We can see that is the name of the setting. I would really much rather have that be a variable name that we can use in all the various places. But these are things that should not change very often, so you got to get it right first time, because that's what's going to show up in people's save files. And once it's on someone's save file, you want to support it pretty much forever. So name it well in the first place, and then don't change it very often. So making it easy to change is actually not a plus in this case. So we want to go ahead and set that setting to the order. And then we want to make sure we call self.settings. Well, actually, it does set setting. Do this, set setting. It does call save. And in fact, it calls a trigger callback in case anyone else cares to know about that. And then we're going to make use of that so that the window that cares about the setting can know that it changed. So we don't need to call save here. That's taken care of for us. So we can come on in, unload, load, come into the options, and let's say I want war to be first. We'll go ahead and move that up and unload. Now, if we're very lucky, it did not work. Okay, must not be calling this function. Let's figure out, where are we calling this function from? Save Anthem priority order. Oh, right, we didn't call the function. So, up button. When the button is clicked, we're going to go ahead and just call save Anthem priority order. And same thing when the down button is pressed. This is maybe not the most efficient thing, that we could have a separate save button to kind of finalize. But in this case, I don't know, do we want to save out a file every time we do this? So, yes-ish. In a perfect world, I would either have a save button to save this one thing, which is just different from everything else, so I wouldn't do that. But what I would do is I would start a 5 to 10 second timer. And anytime this Anthem priority changes, I would just reset that timer. So if someone's moving things up and down and up and down and up and down, we just keep on resetting that timer. And after 10 or so seconds, we then save. Instead of saving every time you click the button, just save when things seem stable. So what we're going to do here is set a to-do item. Instead of saving after every up-down click in Anthem priority options, start a 10-second timer, and that restarts after each up-down. On timer expiration, save. Cool. And we don't have to worry about it right now. Again, there's only 7 anthems here. We just don't want to be triggering lots of saves, lots of loads, lots of whatevers, if we can avoid it. It's just impolite, is what it is. The save file's super small, so it's not a big problem. It's just, you know, it's a politeness thing. In fact, self-save, this might be a thing to do in self-save itself, actually. Thought, do this in settings save itself instead of everywhere. Instead of for each option that wants it. And then in that case, when the plugin loads, check for an uncompleted timer. So if there is a timer active and we haven't saved it, just go ahead and flush it out at that point. So that's what we would want to do to be a little bit more gracious about the saves, is don't save every time something changes. Just queue up a desired save that will come back around, and each time a setting is changed, reset that timer. Now, you could even go one step further and say, well, if they've been changing stuff and it's been like 5 minutes and they haven't stopped changing stuff, maybe go ahead and save anyway. But I don't know. Like, if they keep changing stuff that much, they're just clicking randomly in the options, and you might as well just assume it's a cat doing it at that point, or a dog stepping on your keyboard or something. I don't know. So this is a good midway change, I think. Okay, but we do need to click Save Priority Anthem. So we've done that. Let's unload. Let's reload. Let's come on in. Let's move war on up and unload that file. And if we see that, we come in. Yes, Anthem priority shows on up in here, and we can see we can actually manually reorder this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It won't persist. The order is random each time, but we can see that 1, 2, 3, 4 got popped up to the first one. 5, 6, 7. So good. All right. That's awesome. We have the only thing we're missing here, and we might be able to do it real fast, is instead, when we're first populating this on load, we have add Anthem priority control. And we're iterating through that global anthems for priority selection, but we don't need that. So we don't want to iterate through this. We want to iterate through the settings and use the value in the settings to index into this. And so what we want to do instead is we're doing I pairs. Does 4 I pairs go in order? Let's find out. Lua I pairs. I mean, I would hope so. Let's see. Lua iterate in order. Iterate table in order. In key order. All right. What do people say? Iterate through all the key value pairs. You can use pairs. Doesn't guarantee iteration order, but I do want you that. You can retrieve the keys and sort it, and then access that through the sorted keys. But it is sorted. Oh, okay. Yes. Right. So just iterate through explicitly with indexes. Of course. What am I thinking? Great. So for I equals 1 through, now we happen to know it's 7. We can also just say octothorpe here. I could go either way. Get, oh, we should probably just get that. Local order equals self dot settings, get setting, and that's the, again, the anthem priority. Ben's asks, is LOTRO still using an old Lua version? Depends on what you mean by old. LOTRO has a Lua, an embedded Lua of version 5.1 with some of the extra extraneous stuff like network access and whatnot removed. And so it's a sort of a custom embedded version of Lua. And so anything any basic syntax that you would expect to be in Lua 5.1 should probably also be here. Some of the extra exciting stuff like file access or network access or that kind of thing, not so much. But yeah, all the basic stuff is there. Okay, so we're going to iterate through each one of those, and in each one of those, wait, what is my, yep, I'm missing do. So, and here we have the Anthem index, so local Anthem index equals order of I, and then we can do, we can go ahead and get the key here. So what are we using? We're just using K and V. Okay, so at that point we can mentally come back in. Let's see, the Anthem index, we could just rename that. Anthem index. Awesome. And then V, what was that? Well, that was the Anthem text. So that was the localized Anthem Anthem name, yeah. Okay. So we know what we're dealing with, and then we can kind of take that into consideration. So the localized Anthem name, localized Anthem name, is going to be equal to Anthem's propriety selection. And it's going to be that Anthem index. And at that point, we can kill the old loop and instead use these new ones. Okay, well, let's try that out and see how crazy it is. If we go ahead and load, well, first of all, no syntax errors. That's nice. And second, we can see, yes, Anthem War is at the top. Let's get Anthem of the Free People on up there. Unload, reload. Anthem Free People, Anthem 2 War, and the rest of them in that same order. If we come back into the save file, and again, we might want to reorder this just for readability. This isn't going to persist. It's just an option. So 5, 6, 7, great. We can come on in and see number 1 is 7, number 2 is 4, and then the remaining 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Ah, it's so good. So now we have a way to represent the 7 in-game anthems. We have a way to organize that priority for them. We can save that order as a simple table of numbers, so it's not language dependent. We can load that table and use it to populate the UI. This is, I would say, a pretty much done user interface. I would love to get those icons of the anthems in there, but that's not a today problem. It's not needed to get this going. So that's great. And then next time, we can start using this list to pop up a UI that knows what anthems you have active, how long they have left on them, and what your preferred anthem order is. And so we can start doing that. And there's going to be a lot of, I think, hard-coded logic that says, oh, you want Anthem 1 Residence, and Anthem 1 Residence and Compassion is active, so that counts, except there's less than 25 seconds left on it, so it doesn't count. We're going to be thinking about this. We're going to be thinking about how do we track which anthems are currently active, how much time is left on them, all of that stuff. That's all going to be coming up starting next week. I'm super excited to see this continue to come into existence. I am forever clicking on, say, Anthem to War when I mean to click on Anthem to Dissonance, because War doesn't come with a personal effect and Dissonance does, and I think this is going to be great. So let's go ahead and bring this stream to a close. If you have any last minute thoughts, questions, concerns, comments, etc., toss them into chat there, etc., from the French. Toss them into chat there. And in the meantime, I'm going to take a peek at the source control and see if there's anything. Yeah, I think we want to go ahead and save this. So initial settings for Anthem priority. Let's go ahead and add that in. And then, to do changes. Let's go ahead and add that in. And then what's going on with the options window? We have use saved Anthem priority when loading UI. Great. That is, and also use custom control instead. I should have committed that earlier. Oh well, instead of label. So that's a combination thing. That's a bit of an oops, but it's going to be annoying to untangle, so I'm not going to bother. Sometimes you just do that. All right, save priority order, save priority order. Yep. Use saved Anthem. Save and load Anthem priority in options UI. Use custom control and label in list box. So it's both of those things. Okay, we've got the git, we've got the save. We're going to stage that and commit and push out those 10 different commits into the remote repository. Awesome. Phew. All right. Well, that was lots of fun. I'm glad we made some good progress there. It's matching pretty well what I had in my head for that. All right. Well, in response to the Lua version, Bim said, gotcha, thanks, and glad I'm here. See you next time. Awesome. Yes. I'd like to get some progress done on plugins, if only during this 2 or 3 hours a week. Some weeks I'm very good about doing, other times, and some weeks it's just this time slot. So coming back and talking about LOTRO development with you all is a great way to also get some LOTRO development done. All right. Well, not seeing anything else rolling on into chat. That's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you here next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right. Bye-bye now.